Hello everyone. We're going to be talking about the equinox and the solstice, which are two words that I think probably you've heard before, but maybe not necessarily know what they mean. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Before we do that, I just wanted to review a couple of quick things. We've been talking about the reasons for the seasons, and in our conversation and investigation of this, we have mentioned that the Earth revolves around the Sun. And that takes 365 and a quarter days to make a full revolution around the sun. That's part of the reason we have those leap years. There's an extra day added on every 4 years because we got to make up for that extra quarter. And we've also mentioned that the Earth is tilted, and it's tilted at a 23.5 degree angle. So instead of being straight up and down, it rotates around its axis at an angle. We also looked at in class about how the angle that the light hitting the Earth might affect how warm it gets. So for example, at the equator, you're getting direct sunlight hitting directly. So that's going to result in very intense, concentrated light. Versus the light coming from the sun hitting the poles at more of an angle, that's going to spread the light out a little bit more. It's going to be less concentrated. It's not going to be as intense. So that's something that's really important when we're talking about seasons, to know that that's what happens. One of the biggest misconceptions about the seasons is that they're caused by the Earth being further away or closer to the sun. And this is actually, I can see why people would think this, because you would assume the closer you are to the sun, the more intense, the more hot it's going to be. It must be summertime. But if it were just simply distance, then really we should all be experiencing summer at the same time. We should all be experiencing winter at the same time. And that's not the case. If you go to the northern hemisphere, you're going to be experiencing one season. If you go to the southern hemisphere, you're going to be experiencing a completely different season. And the other reason I know that distance isn't really the only factor is that when the northern hemisphere, when we're experiencing our winter in January, we're actually closest to the sun at that point. So if we're closer to the sun in January, and the distance is the reason for the seasons, we should be experiencing summer just as the southern hemisphere is. And we're not. We're in winter. Right? So we know that distance can't be the factor. We're much closer in winter than we are in summer. It has to be something else. And that's where the angle of the sunlight hitting the Earth comes in. Right? We're hitting at a more direct angle in the summertime when we're leaning towards the sun. And when we're leaning away from the sun, it's a much more spread out, dispersed angle. Right? The light's not going to be as concentrated, not going to be as strong. Right? So this leads us to the equinox. Now an equinox in Latin, equi meaning equal, nox meaning night, just means exactly that. Equal night, equal day. Okay? So in March, when the days are starting to get longer and longer, right, we're moving away from winter towards summer, we experience a vernal equinox or a spring equinox. And that happens on March 20th of every year. And that's the exact moment when the day is the same amount of time as the night. And as you can see, the tilt is kind of tilted sideways. So it's not tilted toward the sun, it's not tilted away, or sideways. So we end up with equal day, equal night. We also experience a autumnal or a fall equinox on September 22nd when we are experiencing shorter and shorter days, right, moving away from the summertime until we eventually have them equal. And then the further this way you go, the shorter and shorter the days get until you get to winter again. Right? So equinox, think equal, equal day, equal night. We experience two. We experience a vernal, a spring, and an autumnal, a fall. Now the solstice, in Latin, sol means sun, and stis comes from the word sistere, to make stand. Right? So a solstice is really kind of the opposite of the equinox. It's when, in the summertime, when we experience the longest days of the year, we call that a summer solstice. And in the wintertime, when we experience the shortest days of the year, we call that a winter solstice. Now, the winter solstice and the summer solstice are different depending on what hemisphere you're in. Right? So in June, on June 21st, the northern hemisphere experiences its summer solstice. The southern hemisphere is experiencing its winter solstice. They're tilted away from the sun, so they're getting less direct sunlight. They're experiencing much shorter days. And notice, if you were to live on the South Pole, you'd really be experiencing about 24-hour darkness, right? Because you're completely spinning around in a circle and the sun's never hitting you. Versus if you're in the North Pole, you're experiencing constant daylight because you're tilted towards the sun. You never go into darkness. And then our winter solstice on December 21st in the northern hemisphere is the summer solstice for the southern hemisphere. Alright, so that was just a quick review of equinoxes and solstices. If you have any questions, make sure you come and see me and review your vocabulary. Have a great night.